This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. Most any contemporary musical style can trace its roots back to the blues. Time Signatures explores the blues and its musical connections with captivating interviews, lively discussions, and news from the world of the blues.
You know I'm crying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Yes, we are home. Thank you so much, Parker. Appreciate the kind entrance. Time Signatures is honored to welcome today's special guest, Plain and Simple. He's been a part of the Chicago blues scene since he attended that first blues jam at Blues Etc. in 1993. He has served as a Chicago Transit Authority bus driver for 27 years, but when the sun went down, you'd find him jamming somewhere in the city, building a good name for himself. Well, that hard work and dedication paid off eventually, and now some 30 years later, Toronzo Cannon commands a much larger stage at venues all around the world. And when you see him play, you're going to enjoy his show, The Chicago Way. Toronzo, welcome to Time Signatures, my friend.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate having you on here, and we've got a lot to talk about. I'm so excited to hear several parts of your story because there's so much compelling stuff that when I get a chance to talk to a musician, I love hearing the backstory. It's just something about it that really makes it enjoyable. And with you, I'd like to ask you to start. What are your earliest memories of music as you were growing up? Did you have any favorite tunes in those early years?
I guess the music of the day would be Shaka Khan and the 70s music, things that my mother listened to and my aunts and uncles and things like that. Shaka Khan, Parliament Funkadelic, then you got Al Green and all those cats.
Right on.
But then I'll hear like some Little Walter that my grandfather would play, and some Muddy Waters and things like that. Not a lot of it, but just enough where I recognized it when I got a little older. Because at the time blues wasn't a genre for me. It was just like music that my grandparents played,
Right.
and things that I heard in the house, Yeah.
So many members of the Chicago blues scene have come from other states, generally in the South, and ultimately, as you mentioned, it was your grandfather. Is it Lynch Cannon? Did I pronounce that right?
Lynch Cannon, yes. Came from Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, 1944. Now, but that really provided some fertile ground for you, didn't it?
It did. My family ended up on the south side of Chicago, about 2 blocks from Teresa's, which is an iconic club that I didn't know anything about. I just knew my uncles and aunts went down there, and I was just a little kid getting some ice cream at about a half a block from the place,
Right.
But a lot of things came full circle, when I got older.
Yes, sir. Toronzo, talk about that first guitar your sister purchased for you in 1998. Did you ever imagine that it would lead you to where you are today?
No, because it was just a thing where she was practicing piano, and she was asking people around the house, the younger people, you want an instrument? You want to learn how to play an instrument? And at that time, I was a little bit older. I was listening to 80s music, like John Cougar and things like that. John Cougar, The Police, Devo, things like that, along with, Shaka Khan's and all that stuff, and all those bands. And I remember hearing the acoustic sounds of John Cougar, actually.
Right.
And that's kind of what made me go into the wanting to play guitar, because the big acoustic sound. And I love reggae too, so I was listening to reggae at the time also. So I asked for a guitar. She bought me a $99 Harmony from a pawn shop. And I picked it up and I turned it left-handed. And the strings are upside down. And I remember looking on a video of Bob Marley, Redemption Song. And it was a video where he would hit the bass strings at the top. And it's like, okay, and when I looked at the guitar, I'm like, okay, I think these strings are wrong. Because I didn't know I was a left-handed guitar player.
Right.
I knew I was left-handed. So I came into this thing like totally backwards and just kind of like innocent, you know what I mean? So we took it right back to the pawn shop, and the guy switched it lefty for me. And then that's when I could properly learn Redemption Song by Bob Marley.
Now, from the sounds of it, those first 3 lessons that you got were pretty formal, but that was about it. You was pretty much self-taught from that point forward.
Yeah. I think I mean, that's my sister read it in another interview, but I owe her. I owe her for 1 lesson lost because she paid for 4 lessons every Wednesday.
Right.
And I would go down there, and the guy was teaching me like some country western chords or something like that. And I think I still might have his notes from that long ago. And it just didn't feel right because I was like, I want to learn reggae. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He's like, there's no reggae chords. There's chords. I'm like, okay. So I didn't go back that last Wednesday, but I never told my sister that I didn't go back. I didn't honor her the month's lesson she bought me, But I just trial and error. I figured how did Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all those guys, even Bob Marley, how did they learn? And I figured they learned trial and error. So that's what I thought. Trial and error, or a lot of time on your hands mixed with a little bit of talent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just took it from that perspective,
Now, I have to hear about your incredibly crazy lifestyle when you first got going in the jams and such. I mean, you worked all day and then you'd hit places like Blues Etc., Kingston Mines, and some of the little holes in the wall. I can't even imagine that was an easy path, but you weren't one to take the easy route, were you?
Well, when you don't know what you're doing, sometimes it seems easy because you just kind of like, I just wanted to be around cats with the like mind and learn something. And if the jam was on the west side of Chicago, and it's like, okay, all right, let's go. I worry about waking up in the morning and driving a bus, when I get home, I guess I was responsible because I never like left the club and then went to drive the bus. I've always had a buffer of what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And what I had to do, that kind of thing. And at that time I had, got a family and everything going. I was married and all that.
Right.
So, at that time, things, responsibilities and all that stuff. But my wife at the time, she was very supportive and really didn't, give me any flack about going out. She would come and hang out with me too until she got tired of hearing the same old songs.
Right.
The songs I've been practicing, that for that whole week just to get on stage for, 8 minutes. and learn, or play what I had tried to learn all that week, Well,
Toronzo, I want to fast forward just a little bit to the point where you established yourself a little bit in the Chicago area, and now you're starting to get some premium gigs, including some overseas opportunities. How did that work with your employment? I mean, I've heard stories, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, some of it was luck and good timing.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a while, like when the whole thing was up where I joined Alligator, let's fast forward a little bit. When I joined Alligator and I was on Channel 9, then WGN, which is a local TV station here in Chicago.
Right.
They kind of outed me a little bit, so because they had to call CTA to get clearance on some of the video footage. So now CTA is kind of saying, okay, what is this all about? Like, who's this guy? What garage? That kind of thing. So now I'm thinking like, oh boy, they're going to start saying he's a blues man and he's out, carousing and drinking and blah, blah, blah. And he's not being responsible driving the bus. But it worked in the opposite. It worked opposite for me where they looked at it as a feel-good story for other operators and other drivers,
Sure.
I still had to sign a second employment form, though. They still wanted to protect themselves, which I understand. But it worked out where I would work Monday through Thursday and play my gigs on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. But and I would take my vacations just to satisfy the overseas gigs that I had.
Okay.
I would plan that accordingly. But then once I kind of got CTA started to know what I did, then I guess I got some kind of favor because the managers were kind of nice to me and they would let me kind of reschedule my vacation times, and then they would help me, leverage my off days and things like that to make my overseas gigs if it lasted a week or something.
Wow. So you had some good support with your employer, definitely.
Well, they were getting some in return also, and I guess the statute of limitations is up now because I'm retired, so there's nothing they can do to me, right? They were getting something in return. The managers were getting things in return,
Sure.
like if Channel 2 CBS would come see me, they would get their red tape untangled by get supplies and things like that, right? Because
Right.
they'll just get a call from downtown. They'll say, media's coming. Make sure your garage looks good, right? so now here comes, I mean, people they automatically thought it was like the mayor or somebody, just coming to have a press conference.
Sure.
And a lot of people didn't know it was just a bus driver. It was just a bus driver that was, doing some, different things. The reason why media kept coming,
Right.
So they would get their red tape untangled by getting supplies and getting things they need for the garage, but off of my notoriety, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember one time I was checking for my bus. I was getting the bus early in the morning, and there was a guy, like a maintenance guy, looking at me. And it was kind of strange, hey, what's going on, man? How you doing? He's like, are you the guy that we clean up the garage for all the time? I said, yeah, that's me. And he was like, yeah, we always think it's the mayor coming down, but it's you, like that. I'm like, well, hey, I'm sorry, but not sorry, that kind of thing,
Right.
But it was, it worked out. It worked out in my favor in the long run.
You're listening to Time Signatures with Jim Ervin. My guest with me at this time is Toronzo Cannon. Toronzo is big in the Chicago area, but he's even bigger in some areas of the world, over in Europe. And I mean, he's got a following just about everywhere you go. As a matter of fact, Toronzo, I was peeping on your Spotify app. You got like 25,500 followers that listen on a monthly basis to your music. That's got to be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I wish I can get more. I wish I could be the Taylor Swift of the blues, but
right.
But hey, I'll take what I can get, because it's just always cool that people want to hear what you have to sing about and hear your stories and your songs. So I never take that for granted, and that's real cool. That's very cool.
Well, and I have to tell you, my first experience with Toronzo Cannon was a very positive one. When you came over to Jackson to the Blues Fest this summer, and I had a chance to hear you and Joanna Connor, and y'all just killed it, man. You just absolutely killed it. But more importantly than that, you guys, and this is another tip of the hat to the blues genre, the musicians are generally friendly people, and you guys, you both treated me very well and didn't know me from Adam, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I sometimes that's a little weird, because it's like, why wouldn't musicians treat just other people good?
Right.
I think the blues in some way, it should, if you're true to the culture of the blues, it should keep you humble,
Sure.
because you're just a person that's just happen to have a guitar or piano or harmonica, and you're expressing your blues, and hopefully somebody else will understand and say, I understand that blues, and they listen to it and they feel it. So that would just make me just a regular person, other than I'm no better than the next man. If somebody want to talk, hey, let's talk,
Right.
And sometimes I guess that got me in trouble, but like, I'll walk out in the audience sometimes before a gig at a festival, and people start coming around me and stuff, and I'm just like, I just wanted to buy a shirt at the vending machine over there, at the vendor. And I get to talking to people, and their security come running around. I'm like, dude, I'm nobody special, man. It's cool, it's all right,
And if I remember
but I
right,
understand it though, I guess.
and if I remember right, you went and did a little shopping for your daughter while you were there, right after your set.
Yeah. I got her a little dress, whatever, Yeah, I mean, I'm always got my eyes open for my daughter. That's my only child, so I gotta do it right.
Right. Well, Toronzo, I ask every musician this when I interview them, how the COVID pandemic affected their trajectory and their drive during that difficult period of time. How did it affect you, and what did you do to pass the time and keep the blues spark alive?
I guess the position I was in, I had an agency to kind of look out for me and was getting me, video things that I could do to kind of keep my my face out there. I was doing some things myself on Facebook and and sometimes Instagram. But I think the fact that I had a record label, they kind of helped me stay out there,
Mm-hmm.
which was cool, and and then just kind of soldier through it. Now I was still working too, so as far as money, of course we all need money and extra money and things like that. But I still was driving a bus at the time. So I really wasn't like hurting like some of my fellow musicians. They did it for a living, or they do it for a living. So, but it affected me because I couldn't get out and, and do my gigs. That was part of my peace while driving the bus. That was my peace. Having a hectic day on the bus, I knew I always had something to look forward to by playing my music, or I had a gig, or I could be out and I can, just kind of relax and like, okay, wow, okay, I'm around like-minded people and not people that's, looking for argument on the bus, or traffic, things like that.
Now, I'm not going to let you get off that easy, because you referenced when we first started talking, before we started recording, your new hobby that you picked up. And didn't you pick up the one wheel during COVID?
I did. I picked up the one wheel during COVID, and then that was a very. I retired in October 2020, and then I got something called electric unicycle, which is like a step up from the one wheel. It's like it's faster, it's a little bit more mobile. You can go farther distances and things like that, and that's become a passion and a stress reliever, and sometimes a thing where I could just I could just relax my mind and just be gone. Just be gone. It's cool. It's like you're floating.
Oh yeah. And how in the world are you playing guitar while you're riding that thing? I love those videos, man.
Yeah, no, it's just me trying to be different, me trying to be different and be seen, maybe I wasn't breastfed as a child. I don't know, but that's just me trying to do something different from the blues men and women,
Oh yeah. Now, I have to ask you about two pieces in your instrument collection, both of which are recent additions. Midnight in Chicago, which is sexy as all get out. And then
thank you.
One of Buddy Guy's famed polka dot covered Strats. I got to hear the details, man, because you claim that you're a victim of circumstance with the Strat.
Yeah. I've always liked right-handed Strats anyway, know? I mean, it's just, and it's a direct hit towards Jimi Hendrix,
Sure.
And the fact that it's a Buddy Guy Strat that's upside down now,
Right.
It already looks weird because it's got a bunch of polka dots on it, but now that it's upside down, and then it's a color that's not normally made, they only sell them at his club,
Right.
And so it's like, I just like the weirdness of it. Sometimes I like being the only one in a so many block radius that's got a different guitar,
Now,
I want to
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
I want to thank Eric Betty out of Georgia for making that guitar for me. That was very cool. He had heard one of my songs, Bad Contract, and that touched him in a way where he was like, because he's a musician himself. But he said he just made guitars now for players that still have the spark, and still have something to say. And he made it for me in 2020. But things was happening, life was happening, of course, and I didn't get it until about maybe 4 months ago, maybe.
I got to tell you, that thing is just flat out sexy. It really is, and
it is.
And seeing the Chicago flag up there on the fretboard is just wow. Every piece of that thing is incredible.
Yeah, I remember when he chipped up the mother of pearl to make that, and it was just like wow. Because he was showing me step by step what was going on, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And I just couldn't imagine that it would look like it would look now,
Yeah.
And but yeah, the first gig that I took it on was Romania.
Yep.
And I took it without even really like doing a little, a gig as far as like just to get the feel of it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna jump in the deep end, and I took it right to Romania, the first gig out.
That is so cool. Now, Toronzo, I'm under orders to ask you a question on behalf of our mutual friend Denise Lynch, who, by the way, sends her very best along with Twyla.
Okay,
I'm supposed to
thank them. Thank you.
Well, you just did, and I'll make sure they hear
Oh,
it.
okay.
You got to tell me about your Emmy.
Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a Channel 9 thing again.
Okay.
The Pam Grimes was the producer of that episode from Steve Sanders. He was an anchorman on Channel 9. He's also a blues player. His brother, he's a guitar player. His brother plays blues out of Canada. So we became friends and things. And I would get a couple of spotlights on WGN.
Sure.
And I guess they thought my story was intriguing enough to make a whole episode on, right? And they met me at the garage at 5 a.m. They came to my house or whatever. They saw what I go through. Like this is not something made up. I really wake up, at 4 a.m. or 4:30 to get to work at 5:30, whatever it is, And they followed me throughout the day, and I didn't know it was going to be up for an Emmy. I just thought it was an episode. And they won an Emmy. I found out they won an Emmy. And Pam Grimes told me, she said that when she retires, she's going to give me the Emmy like that,
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, okay, because Steve said, oh, she's got 12 of them,
Wow.
because, she's like an Emmy winning machine, right?
Sure.
So periodically I would ask her, hey, can I keep the Emmy? That kind of thing. So this last time, she just told me, she said, why don't you just keep the Emmy, until I call you back or something like that, And I said, okay, so I got the Emmy prominent on my shelf in the apartment.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. You are definitely a blessed man working in the Chicago area, getting to rub elbows with the likes of Buddy Guy and some of the others. And as I look at history, and as the older generation passes from the scene, as so many of them have in the last 20 years, people are now looking to people like Toronzo Cannon and others to keep the blues alive. That really must be an incredibly weighty responsibility to bear, yes?
Well, it is, and it shocked me when you said, I've been just at 30 years. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years, It's like, wow, 30 years. Like, that's crazy. But, I hold Chicago dear to my heart as far as the ground that these bluesmen came from down south, and they decided to land here in Chicago and create a whole different type of genre and sound of the blues. I feel it would be a disrespect if I was to short step it or try to half step it or try to find some way to, not make it right, and I have to keep that I have to keep that alive in some way, in small way, hopefully with the other musicians here in Chicago. But I seem to be the first one that came out and started yelling Chicago loudest, the loudest, even naming my band the Chicago Way.
Yes, sir.
Me being a bus driver also, I guess helped out too, me being a city worker, knowing the ins and outs of Chicago, knowing Chicago is not a perfect city.
Right.
But there's no utopia around that I know of. So you have to, take your city for its warts and all, I've said that before. But this, I just love my city and the history of it when it comes to the blues. And I don't want to disrespect the ancestors that's paved the way for me to even have the guts to come out and say Chicago blues.
Yes,
so
sir.
So whenever I wave my flag and I go different places, I went to Kentucky and the guy walked up to the stage and said, what kind of flag is that? I said Chicago flag, and he said, okay, and he walked away. But it would it would be not cool if I didn't again raise the flag. And I see other musicians now kind of are being proud of the city that they claim, or that they claim to be their city. be proud of where we are in the history of these blues,
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, I take it as a challenge. Even when I go to New York, I take the flag to New York. I was in the middle of Times Square about a month ago with the Chicago flag.
I saw the video, brother. I saw the video, and I loved it.
And I'm not. Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to be from somewhere, and if no one knows anything about Toronzo, they're gonna know I came from Chicago.
Yes, sir.
Well, I got a gig. I got a gig like that too. Joe Bonamassa's boat. Joe Bramhall had to cancel for some reason, and one of the organizers said, "What about that guy from Chicago?"
There you go.
And they called the agency, and the agency said, "Hey, Joe Bonamassa wants you on the boat." I said, "Cool,
awesome,
yeah,
that is so cool."
Yeah,
Toronzo, we are just about out of time for this episode. I wanted to ask you though, where can listeners find your music, your tour information, and how to book you?
ToronzoCannon.com. Everything is there. Just like it sounds, Toronzo, Toronzo, Cannon with 2 N's. And Intrepid Agency, they do all of my booking. And I'm on every stream, or every media platform, the Instagrams, the Spotifys, and everything, the Facebooks and all that stuff,
Yes, sir. Well, Toronzo Cannon, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on Time Signatures. All the best to you in the future. And by all means, keep in touch, because I'm hoping before long we're going to see another CD come out or something like that. So definitely keep in touch with us, okay?
We're in the studio next month. You're the first one to know that. We're in the studio next month.
You got it. All right, man. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Time Signatures. We want to thank everybody for tuning in, and also Toronzo one more time for being here. And most of all, thank you all for helping us keep the blues alive.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.
Baby,